The Sony A7IV has been my go-to camera the last year, and even though the FX30 offers some amazing specs, there's one area that makes me regret buying it. Let me explain. So I'm filming this video on the Sony FX30 just for reference, and I have the A7IV right here. Decided to do a comparison of these cameras as I've been shooting on the A7IV for most of this year, and I picked up the FX30 a little over a month ago. I've had the opportunity to work with these cameras, comparing them side by side, doing videos and photo with both of them to see which one I would actually pick. And not to spoil the rest of the video, but there really is one factor that makes me think that I should have just bought a second Sony A7IV instead of the FX30. So the Sony FX30 is a very new camera. It has not been around very long, and we just barely hit a year with the A7IV. So these two cameras are completely new from Sony in a sense. Both of them offering 4K capabilities, being that the FX30 offers 4K up to 120 frames per second. But the biggest difference between these two cameras is that one is full frame and the other is aps-c. If we're talking about image quality comparison side by side, if you're using the full frame sensor of the A7IV, comparing it to the FX30, the A7IV is sharper. It's just gonna be like that because it's a bigger sensor. But keep in mind that the A7IV is $700 more than the FX30. I thought this was an interesting comparison because these cameras really aren't that similar, to be completely honest with you. One is a very hybrid-centric camera that does great photos and great videos, and the other is a video first camera based off of the FX3, which is a video first cinema camera. And this is a cinema lineup camera, so it's not meant for photos. But I was surprised when my followers asked for this comparison and were actually really excited about it. So I thought, might as well put them together and see what they do. In my opinion, I think a better comparison would be the FX30 versus like the XH2S from Fujifilm or even the X-T4. I think those would be better comparisons. I might have to pick up one of those just to test them, put them side by side. I would also really like to see the FX30 up against like the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro. I could do that comparison. So if you want that comparison, let me know in the comments down below. But one of the things that the A7IV provides that people were a little frustrated about was the crop sensor on the 4K 60. That hasn't super bothered me. There's been a couple moments with it that I've been like, man, I wish it was a little bit wider, but sensor size really isn't a huge deal to me. So talking price, the Sony FX30 is an $1,800 camera if we're talking American dollars, and the A7IV is a $2,500 camera, roughly, give or take. So there is about a $700 difference. Now, in my case, I got the XLR handle with the Sony FX30. So I spent about $2,200 on my FX30 kit. And I actually bought this used, so I got it a little bit less than that. So comparing them side by side, like price wise, the A7IV is significantly more. So if you're looking for a budget option, I'll tell you this right now, get the FX30. It's worth it. You're gonna like it. It takes great photos, great video, and you're gonna love it. And on top of that, you'll save yourself $700. If you have a little bit more to spend, if you have a little bit more of a budget, maybe you are wanting full frame. Well, it's kind of a toss up. And I believe that there's one deciding factor between the FX30 and the A7IV, and that's low light. Now, this may be a sensor size thing. In my opinion, I think that is the issue. I think it's sensor size. There could be a lot of other things. There could be compression. There could be how the FX30 processes low light, how it processes noise in the image. But I have noticed looking at them side by side, if you look at these two comparisons, raising the ISO in all the ISO ranges, the A7IV performed better even in the Super 35 crop mode. In full frame mode, the A7IV did much better in low light compared to the FX30. It is a full frame sensor versus a crop frame sensor. I kind of thought that was a given. So putting them side by side with the A7IV in Super 35 mode, in my opinion, pixel peeping, I think the A7IV is better. But yeah, low light capabilities of the FX30, I've had a really hard time recovering low light. There's been a few shots where, for example, in this shot, there's a lot of neon lighting in the background, and trying to recover all the darks and stuff like that was really, really difficult. And with my A7IV, I could have recovered those no problem, even if it wasn't in full frame. And I've never had problems with noise reduction or with low light capabilities on the A7IV. I've pushed it all the way to 12,800 ISO, and on the FX30, I just don't feel confident enough that the camera would be able to handle that. And I'm really surprised by that because Sony is the low light beast. They've always been known for fantastic low light. And so I was kind of surprised. And there have been a couple of YouTubers out there that have discovered that the Sony FX30 is dual native ISO. So dual native meaning you have native ISO at 800 ISO and then dual native at 2500 ISO. Looking at the ISO switch, the noise switch in here, I actually think it's about at 6400 ISO. I didn't really see much of a difference or change between 2000 ISO and 2500 ISO. That was really interesting to think that, oh, is Sony lying to us here? I don't know. You can take that for a grain of salt. One other factor I found interesting is that on the A7IV, the active stabilization is really good. Even if you're not in full frame mode, if you're in Super 35, 4K 60, the stabilization on it is pretty dang good. But on the FX30, it's okay. It's not my favorite. I don't think it's as comparable as the A7IV, but I still think that it does an okay job. That's kind of the only rating I could give it. So all in all, I think that they're both fantastic cameras and you'll be happy with either of them. If it were me going back in time, trying to decide between these two cameras, if I didn't own any Sonys whatsoever, I was buying my first camera, I'd probably spring for the A7IV, spend a little bit extra cash and get that full frame sensor, get those low light capabilities. But there are a couple things about the FX30 that makes me happy that I bought it in tandem with my A7IV. And one of them is the ability to load preset LUTs onto the camera. That is an awesome feature that I wish Sony would implement into all of their cameras. Yeah, I didn't want to make this video too long just because I really don't have much to say about this. I think it depends on your situation, understanding your budget, understanding your needs as a content creator. You know, are you more photo? Are you more video? What are you going to be doing with this camera? I think it's a fantastic companion with any of Sony's full frame cameras, but that doesn't mean the FX30 would be a blowout option. I think if you're mostly gearing towards video capabilities, if you're going to be doing like short films or you need a camera on the go for traveling and for vlog style type of stuff, I think the Sony FX30 would be a 10 out of 10 option. Again, it depends on you, depends on what you're doing. But unless I'm trying to shoot 4K 120 or 1080 at 240 frames per second, so high speed frame rates, I tend to choose the A7IV over the FX30 when they're both sitting in my bag. Anyway, I hope this short video was helpful for you in deciding which camera to pick. There's different factors to either of them, and I think you would be happy with either one, to be completely honest. Just think about your budget, think about how much you want to spend. If you want to save $700, get the FX30. There's a lot more lens options as well. Like you have the Viltrox 13mm f1.4. You've got a lot of third-party lenses that are aps-c capable and not full frame capable that are much cheaper and are still going to give you sharp image quality. So when considering that, you might have more lens capabilities with the FX30 compared to the A7IV. If you got a second, watch this video next, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you never miss out on new young filmmaker content. Good luck filmmaking.